make climate, it will not change climate. You're giving taxes to a government that will spend it in ways that they want to. And I pointed out already with the Conservative Party candidate here, she has already wrote a dissertation on international law relating to using these environmental taxes, this carbon tax, and taking the money out of your pocket and sending it elsewhere. Carbon taxes make businesses here completely uncompetitive on the world market. I can tell you, I work at the steel plant at Nanticoke. One of the processes that we use is in purifying the steel in its molten state is we use lime. Lime that we get from around the Woodstock area. There's a lot of these lime mines that are up there. Before we get that lime, for every ton of lime that they dig out and ship to us, they have to bake that limestone and take the hydrocarbons out. And the hydrocarbons are mainly carbon dioxide. So for every ton of lime that we purchase, there's a ton of carbon dioxide that is expelled into the atmosphere. That is taxed. The compounding multiplier on that is the truck that's now going to deliver that lime to our process has to pay carbon tax. And it just goes on and on. The natural gas that then we use to help boost up our blast furnace, we pay carbon tax on. And it's just never ending. And when you look at what you will be facing on products, grocery stores, or anything in the department stores, everything is shipped here. Everything is moved here by transport, by truck. And they all use fuel. That fuel is carbon-based. And don't fool yourself that you're going to all of a sudden create an electrical grid that is going to be able to support a transportation network that will maintain this standard of living and quality of life with electrical vehicles. It's just not going to happen. I can tell you that I've been watching the carbon or the copper prices since the announcements by many governments that they are going to shut down car production and bring in electric cars. This year alone, copper has gone from about $7,000 an ingot ton at the smelter to somewhere beyond $16,000 a ton, pushing up towards 18. Your average vehicle that we have here today right now has about maybe 3 or 4 pounds of copper in it in wiring and solid state components. An electric car will use about 60 pounds of copper. And you have to use heavy equipment to dig that out. You've got to ship it, you've got to smelt it. You're not saving the environment. You're just changing what you're doing. But I can also tell you, there at this stage is not enough copper in the world to replace your cars. And that's why I think if you get into this UN compact, they're telling you that by the year 2030, and this is the World Economic Forum, who Justin Trudeau has gone to their forums, and he's fully supportive. That's where the term Build Back Better comes from, is from them. It's the term he's using. I kind of lost my thought. I took it to the World Economic Forum. They're not going to be able to replace your cars with these electric cars. It's not going to happen. Your standard of living is going to drop. Yeah. That's just a fallout from going electric and going off the carbon fuels. But your standard of living will drop. It's guaranteed. We're opposed to it. Yes.
So we've all endured the Ontario Liberals and Kathleen Wynne's horrendous hydro deals, which are supposed to take effect in the next 2 to 3 years. Ford worked out some deals with the hydro companies to keep them low for the next couple of years while he was still in office. So what is the party's plan on maybe regulating electrical prices for the average person?
I'm not sure that is within the confines of the federal government. I believe that's provincial myself. I do know, though, that the generating unit that we had here, the coal-fired generating units across this country, were licensed both by the provincial government and the federal government, and under Stephen Harper, they pulled all the licenses, and there was a date given that they all had to come down. So the federal government did have a part to play for our thermal generating plant being shut down, and all the thermal generating plants across the country. They need to have that dual licensing from the federal and the provincial government. As far as us dealing with the actual pricing, that's going to go back to your provincial government, and they have regulatory authority for that. Yes.
One more question. Just today in the news, it was announced that the township, Kitchener-Waterloo municipal government was going to institute rent subsidies that were differential based on the race of the person receiving. That non-white people were, whatever they call white people were going to start receiving a greater amount of rent subsidies because they're more needy or something like that. As I understand it, this is enabled by Section 15(2) of the Constitution for those who are constitutional people. I haven't heard PPC talk about this angle at all. It's a section which kind of undermines literal equality by undercutting Section 15, which says everyone will be treated equal under law. Section 52 says, except if we're trying to fix someone else's historical problems. So it appears as though it has gotten into overdrive and is now getting really kind of dangerous and going to be abusive. Is this something that you're familiar with, or have you thought about this issue?
With that particular mandate, I'm just hearing it for the first time, but it's part of a trend that's taking place in this country. The question was in regards to funding for subsidization on low-income housing, and that the subsidization is coming with strings attached, and that they are using identity politics to decide that people of a certain race will qualify and people of a different race will not qualify. That's not the Canadian way. And the sections within the Constitution that allow for this have to be reviewed and removed. Simple as that. We are all equal, we should all be equal, and we should all be judged the same, with equal rights and equal responsibilities. I'm not a supporter of identity politics. I think that's one of the tools, whether it's multiculturalism or the Indian Act or any of these other devices that the Liberal government has used, and the Conservative government has used them, they've maintained them, they've stopped being conservative, to separate us and to put us into little boxes in the corners where they can use us and influence us, and basically it makes us angry with each other. This sort of politics has to end. It's not the Canadian way, it's not what our Constitution initially started out supporting, and it's something that we have to put an end to. No more identity politics. And then you wouldn't get those sort of programs being put into place. I think now, I've certainly talked a lot. I've said a number of things, answered a number of questions. I appreciate you coming out. This sort of gathering, this is like the old way of doing politics in the past, the traditional way of campaigning. I think right from the beginning, 1867 on, where you can come out and get a flavor of the man and a flavor of the ideas and issues of the day. Which brings me to a quote. I wasn't going to use this, but I'll use it anyways. I think it's very appropriate. It's a quote that in its time was very significant, and I think it applies today to each and every one of us in our walk in life, and especially with these restrictions, these mandates, these lockdowns, and the difficulties that we face with the schools being closed, businesses being shut down, people suffering financially. We're forced to take a stand, and we're forced to make decisions. It's why you're here today. You're making a stand, and I applaud you for it. And this quote is from Martin Luther King. And I'll read it out. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. We are in times of challenge and controversy, and coming together, we have stood together, and we need to take this message back. We need to spread it through the community. We need to let people know that they do have a choice, an option, an opportunity in this election to vote differently, to vote for something that means something, to vote away this totalitarian, authoritarian lockdown changes, that impositions that have been put upon us. It's time for us to take our democracy back, and we will build it back much better. Thank you.
Much better.